Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 119. And for this week, we have a special kind of feature that we're doing where we're going to be looking at Canada Crypto Week, which was last week in Toronto, which consisted of both the Blockchain Futurist Conference as well as Consensus 2025 made their stop in Canada this year. And I will say it was quite an interesting conference to be attending. Among the notable kind of conversations that were happening there, definitely a lot of stablecoin conversation. Speaking about Consensus specifically, a lot of looking at, how the whole kind of regulatory and economic / banking infrastructure is going to be kind of now shifting to an embrace of crypto, shifting to an understanding of the innovation, especially around stable coins, in the ability to move money across borders, as well as just in general being able to do quick transactions and quick movement of funds, especially at the larger volumes, is what a lot of the conversation was around. Notably absent from the Consensus 2025 conference was any NFT conversation, really. I think there were one or two booths that actually had like an NFT on display that was related to their brand. But in general, there was not an overall like art corner. There was not art display of NFTs on chain. There was not really any conversation around the creator economy. Didn't even have like Bored Apes or any of these big kind of NFT brands on display at all whatsoever. So that was kind of interesting. I thought there would at least be, like some Pudgy Penguins, maybe some Bored Ape, or I don't know, one of these bigger collections, even some CryptoPunks. I mean, CryptoPunks probably wouldn't pay for a conference, but I feel like Bored Apes or Pudgy Penguins maybe would do something like that. But it was surprising just how little the NFT conversation and the art conversation more broadly was just not happening at Consensus. And definitely the metaverse conversation as well was really just not on people's minds. It was not at any booths. It was just, a lot of DeFi, a lot of investment. So that's cool. Shout out to Blockchain Futurist Conference. I will say they had a nice art display of some NFTs on chain. Some of my own friends had some art displaying there, so that was really cool to see. And Blockchain Futurist, I've been there. This was my third year now. It was definitely a lot smaller than it had been in prior years. And Consensus actually hooked up a press pass, so that's why I did get some good interviews and access to the press area, where it was a nice area to kind of record some interviews. So that's why all of the interviews really from today's episode are from the Consensus 2025 event, whereas the Blockchain Futurist event didn't really have opportunities for interviews there. And again, it was just a lot smaller. The big brands weren't there. My guess is they were all just deciding to invest specifically in Consensus instead, and maybe it was an either or situation. And it was only like a half a day or 1 day thing for Blockchain Futurist this year, whereas it's usually a 3-day thing or a 2-day thing. Anyway, so that was interesting. But Blockchain Futurist, I think has an important part to play in the Canadian crypto ecosystem. They've been running these conferences basically since Ethereum started in Toronto or Waterloo in the Toronto area. So it's it's a very important conference, I think, for the Canadian crypto environment, and that's why it's always a part of Canada Crypto Week. So that's a little bit about Futurist. I won't be saying much about it because I didn't really get much content from there. And again, it was a lot shorter, a lot smaller. The one thing I'll give it credit for is it did definitely have a bit of an art focus, and there were a lot of kind of grassroots level creators, a lot of payment solutions, a lot of different DeFi platforms, NFT marketplaces even. It was interesting. So shout out to Blockchain Futurist. But we're going to be looking at Consensus for this episode for the most part. I will say I was in the same room with Eric Trump, which was something I don't think I would ever be saying, but it was cool just to see kind of that side of the conversation. I will say I don't generally agree with the Trumps on pretty much anything, but they did bring up some pretty interesting points around Eric and the co-host that he was sitting with. They were basically talking about their company called American Bitcoin, and they were looking at kind of the idea that there is a way to mine Bitcoin in a more efficient and, I guess, profitable way. And basically they were looking at decreasing the costs of energy in America to make it a little bit more profitable to mine the Bitcoin. And of course, they're setting up massive data centers as well as just mining operations in this land in Texas, apparently. So it was interesting. It was, I will say, there was a few things I actually agreed with when it came to the conversation around Bitcoin mining, right? I think that there's really a lot of innovation happening in the space. But at the same time, the conversations, unsurprisingly, were almost always around investments and, you know, being able to essentially have somewhere to store your liquidity, as the investor class would say, which is basically just free cash flow, right? And being able to essentially invest your cash somewhere that you're going to be confident it is going to go up in value, right? And I think crypto across the board, whether you're looking at the OG Bitcoin and the idea that this can now be a store of value that's reliable, you know, the Michael Saylor narrative, the MicroStrategy narrative that's out there was definitely on the top of people's minds at Consensus 2025. But there was also a lot of conversation just around kind of, again, the Bitcoin mining and even altcoins and their kind of place in the system. We ended up reconnecting with Kadena. This time it was with Evan Owens, who was one of their VPs. And so we had a really good chat, just kind of hearing what Kadena is doing and how, again, they're trying to help kind of the industrial side, the investor side of the conversation, and make it easier to, again, store your wealth and crypto assets, and they're also EVM compatible. So we had an interesting conversation around, you know, the use case around Ethereum and a lot of the narrative out there that Ethereum just has lost its excitement, has lost its kind of investor base going forward. You know, is there going to be growth in the kind of layer one of Ethereum? So we actually connected with Andy Baehr from CoinDesk Indices. He's the leader of CoinDesk Indices, which essentially hosts, well, CoinDesk hosts the Consensus 2025. They host Consensus every year. And so it was interesting to kind of speak to their indices lead and talk about how they handle kind of the investor conversation and specifically how their indices work, which is basically like a mutual fund, right? So you get a basket of crypto assets that they manage to ensure profitability over the long term. He claims they've been making 30% profits on average annually. So that's pretty impressive. Obviously, if you're in the kind of investor space, you know, anyone kind of usually aiming for 5 to 10% growth annually, you're pretty happy, right? But in the crypto space, 30% is nice. There will be those who say we want 100% or 200%, and those are the altcoin and the meme coin folks, you know, they're going for broke. But as Andy said, and we'll share that interview on this episode as well, there is a safer way to actually manage crypto investments and have it, I guess, a little bit more spread out, like I say, kind of the mutual fund way of going about investing. And that's what he does at CoinDesk with their index and their indices, basically being able to set up different indexes based on your kind of risk appetite and the different kind of areas of crypto that you might want to invest in, different types of crypto. And he also had an interesting conversation or an interesting point around the Ethereum conversation and the kind of idea that its narrative just hasn't really stuck, and that people will potentially come back around if it becomes more clear what the value is long term around Ethereum, which again I might consider myself an Ethereum bull. I see the value, I see the use case, but it's clear that there is a lot of other opposing kind of views out there. However, if you look at any new blockchain that comes out, any new stablecoin that comes out, as Andy says in our interview, they always require an Ethereum option just to even be taken seriously, right? Most of them require EVM compatibility so that they can actually bring more developers, because there's so many developers in the EVM space, right? And so that's just one reason why I think Ethereum's around, is going to be around for the long haul, and it's not going anywhere. Of course, the Solana folks were there. There was a lot of talk around even Polygon. There was even a new stablecoin, USDG. We spoke to their booth for a brief minute. It was interesting. They have better yield products, I guess, and they, you know, have their own pitch around it. So that was kind of cool to see. I'll also say there was a lot of conversations around the AI conversation and the idea that a lot of these central entities, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Google, whether it's Meta, whether it's X, that they don't necessarily have our best interests in mind, and that the only way that we can actually create an AI that empowers us and that pushes us in the right direction, not the direction of simply adapting and trying to, fit the mold of whatever the AI algorithm wants us to be, right? But actually using AI as a tool and using it to empower ourselves, not just go with the flow. And that's where the blockchain conversation comes in. And I've been hearing from a lot of builders in this AI blockchain space, so we plan to get a lot more of them on the show in the future. And really, we just want to get a better sense of how exactly is it that this, because a lot of people are saying the genie's out of the bottle, right? When it comes to AI, I think Sam Altman's not going to go anywhere. Elon's not going to go anywhere. Zuckerberg's not going to go anywhere. And they got the bags of money. Of course, Google and Microsoft are big players in this as well. But I would say Google and Microsoft are actually, first of all, they've been doing it for a really long time, especially Google on the AI front. But they also seem to have some ethical checks in place. And I'll give Sam Altman some credit as well, because he does seem to be trying to make sure that the AI is kind of evolving in the right direction, maybe would be the argument there. Whereas there's also the Grok element, where I think they're a little bit less concerned about the ethics. However, there are still ethical limitations to what Grok is putting out as well. So all this to say, some people think the genie's out of the bottle and it's already too late to really fix whatever's going on with AI evolution with the blockchain. However, there are a lot of people working on ethical AI, working on kind of pushing some solution through that guarantees data sovereignty for us as humans, that we actually know when we're conversing with other humans, that we actually know how our data is being used to feed this AI behemoth that is only getting bigger and bigger. So that's all very important conversations. And we actually had a really great presentation by Misha da Vinci, who's talking about how to win in the age of AI and instead of adapting, evolving. The audio on the presentation, of course, being in the crowd, was not amazing, but it's still worth sharing, I believe. And I think the presenter in that case did have some really great points to raise. So I will share that with you as well. But all this to say, it was quite a whirlwind of a week. And I was there primarily with my work, which is in the fintech space and the payment space. And we do help a lot of crypto companies out of Palo. And that was the main reason I was in Toronto for Canada Crypto Week. However, I did get the opportunity to sit down with some pretty amazing builders and people that are active in the Web3 and blockchain space, and that's what we're going to share with you today. And so one of the coolest conversations that I had during Canada Crypto Week was a very random one where I connected with an author named Suman Kumar, and she caught my eye because she was wearing a hat that had Cree syllabics on it, which I noticed from a lot of the artwork that I see from TP, my friend NFTP. Shout out to NFTP. So I was familiar with kind of the Cree syllabics, and so I was like, hey, is that Cree? And then she was telling me, yeah, and it said United We Walk on her hat, and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So what brings you to Consensus 2025? Then she shared her book, and so she's actually an author of a book called Reclaiming Sovereignty, and it was a really cool kind of beginner's guide to Bitcoin. And then she explained how her hat was from a community in Northern Quebec, reserve community where she works, and they actually have a lot of revenue coming in from the hydro dam that is on their property. So they have, a good amount of revenue coming in, and they've been talking to her about her Bitcoin journey, essentially, and her book that she launched, Reclaiming Sovereignty. And now they're looking at actually starting a strategic Bitcoin reserve, potentially, for their reserve, for the revenue that they have coming in, to be able to lock it in for long-term gains and, potentially make some use of that for their community. So, of course, I thought that was amazing. And, on Web3 Warriors, we're always looking at real-world use cases, real social impact, real empowerment that comes from the blockchain, from cryptocurrency. So I had to sit down with Suman Kumar and really get a sense of, what brought her to Bitcoin. Why does she think that Bitcoin is kind of reclaiming sovereignty for people, and why someone or a group like an indigenous reserve in Northern Quebec would be able to make use of Bitcoin? So with that, we'll jump into this interview as the first interview that we're going to showcase here, and then we'll transition to a couple others. Hello, everybody. We are here live from Consensus 2025. I'm here with Suman Kumar, who I just met today, and she is the author of Reclaiming Sovereignty, which is how I fell in love with Bitcoin. And she was just telling me the whole story about the work that she does in Northern Quebec. I actually first noticed her hat, which has some Cree syllabics on it, and it says, United We Walk. And at Web3 Warriors, we are always focused on the social impact of the blockchain, the social impact of Web3 and crypto technology. And so when she was telling me the story of how she fell in love with Bitcoin and what she's been kind of advocating for in Northern Quebec on a reserve where she works, and I'll let her tell the story more so, I said, we got to sit down or stand up and talk and get a little bit more information about what you're doing and how you're going to bring Bitcoin to Northern Quebec and specifically the Cree community where you work. So thank you for agreeing to do this interview, Suman, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about reclaiming sovereignty and just give us a little bit of background.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's great to be here. And yeah, I'm an indie author and I just published my book a couple of months ago.
Nice.
And it's been quite the journey because I fell in love with Bitcoin for a reason. And I talk about that in my book, which is the social dimension of Bitcoin. Of course, we go into a bit of a deep dive into the technology and the financial aspects of why people are embracing Bitcoin around the world. But what really caught my eye and I guess captured my heart was just how incredibly transformative Bitcoin has become for people from many, many different walks of life. All over the world, every continent where people live, people are adopting Bitcoin and embracing it.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
I tell a really inspiring story of a friend of mine. His name's Jagar. He lives in India, and he's been active in the NFTs and Web3 space for a long time. More so on the Ethereum side to start with, which is where he was a 3D builder, and he would create assets and sell them on the internet and be able to create some revenue for himself to pay his bills, support his family. But more recently, he started getting into the Bitcoin ecosystem, and he started actually creating 3D assets that they minted as ordinals. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so that's become kind of Bitcoin NFTs, as they call them sometimes. And he made a killing, and like in a good way. And he was able to essentially invest in a local art school in India. So he took that money, invested it in the community, teaching other people how to use blockchain, how to create digital art, how to create 3D art. So that's just one example, to your point, right?
Yeah.
Of how Bitcoin, just having that new opportunity that he wouldn't have had otherwise, bring in revenue, put that revenue back in the community and make a real impact, a real change. So tell us about what you're doing in Northern Quebec and how you see maybe Bitcoin potentially helping up there.
Well, listen, number one, I'm going to talk about Northern Quebec and the Cree Nation that I work for.
Nice.
So the thing is, this book is for newcomers. Okay. For anybody who doesn't know anything about Bitcoin, it's a soft walkthrough.
Nice.
Right? And it's very different. Of course, it covers the tech and the financial side, but what it really does is it talks about what Bitcoin is doing today for people. And I met people from all over the world, right? All over the world, and I interviewed them. And the book is a kind of interwoven, my journey, their journey, Bitcoin's journey, and all of that. Now, how did the Cree Nation get involved in all this?
Yeah.
Well, I met the chief, and she was super excited about this book.
And you work in the education space, right?
I do.
That's how you got into the community.
Yeah, I'm a teacher.
Okay.
And so I met the chief while I was writing the book.
Nice.
And she's like, I'm really excited about Bitcoin, I want to learn more. So we got talking, and I was explaining to her, what it's all about, what it could do for the community. And of course, naturally, as a custodian of the wealth of the community, they're interested in learning more. And now it's like, fast forward 1.5 years, and the book is out.
Yeah.
And they have...
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's amazing.
And they're actually using it as part of their training program.
Okay.
And they are now committed to learning about the Bitcoin primer.
Wow.
So
beautiful.
they are going to be teaching their band council members and executive about Bitcoin.
Nice.
And so it's one step at a time. And
Nice.
I believe every community needs to learn about Bitcoin.
100%.
Not just First Nations communities, but First Nation communities for sure, because they have so much to protect.
Yeah, and we've had that conversation on the show with a few, shout out to Brown Eagle and TP from Northern Manitoba, NFTP she goes by, and she specifically incorporates a lot of Indigenous art into her work that she puts on the blockchain. So we have heard about empowering Indigenous Canadians specifically through blockchain and crypto. And so in this context is the end goal, because you were mentioning the community is fairly, they make money off of the hydro dam that they have on their land, right? And so they do have
have a decent amount of revenue coming in. And so the end goal is essentially to take some of that revenue, obviously not all of it, and maybe invest it in Bitcoin and have a bit of a nest egg, right?
Right.
Strategic reserve, I like it.
Exactly. Well, I think there's a couple of different scenarios here, and I don't know which path they're going to take.
They're just starting the exploration, right?
Yeah. But look, what's really heating up now, actually, pun intended, is the Bitcoin mining reheat, narrative.
Okay.
Which is how Bitcoin mining is, the heat from Bitcoin mining is being used to heat homes.
Okay.
Now, because I'm in the north, it's cold, we need heat.
Yeah.
That's one possibility. Then we have mining separately. Then we have circular economies.
Wow.
Because we're an
sustainability
isolated,
is a major thing, right?
We're an isolated community.
Right.
So, and then there are many, many communities. I'm in one, right?
Right.
So I think that it will be up to the band council to decide what is their next step, you know, in the exploration.
That's beautiful, and good for you for bringing that conversation to the council. It's really exciting. It just shows how one person with, advocating for the technology can make a big difference, right?
Well, you know what I want to see? I want to see every community, indigenous and non-indigenous, look at what Bitcoin can do for them, because I think that people don't know yet, that's the whole point.
Yeah, we still say we're early, even though it's 10, 15 years in.
I know,
we're still early,
but you know what's incredible, right? If you look at it, look at the innovation today versus 15 years ago. Like, the whole conversation around energy usage and Bitcoin mining, that was not part of the white paper, but it's there, right? It's there. So there's a lot of paradigm shifts going on in how useful Bitcoin really is, and I talk about that in my book as well, because it was a deep dive for me, because I was a newcomer, and I really try and break it down in a way that's sort of like not intimidating. It's digestible, right? Small pieces. And it was my journey too, right? So that was the whole point of this, and it's just the beginning. This is the next chapter.
And thank you so much for giving us this interview. And maybe we'll reconnect with you once you've got the community on side and they know what they want to do. We'd love to get a full kind of in-depth look at what you're planning to do up there, and I think it's just really inspiring to hear a story like that. You come to these conferences and most of the narrative is around investment, most of it is around, rich people getting richer, and that's fine, get your money, make your money, but the real impact, the social impact of the grassroots is what I am in it for, and I think it's what a lot of people are in it for. We want real world use cases, we want real impact, and we want to create revenue opportunities where they did not exist prior,
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Show that book to the camera one more time.
Available on
Reclaiming
Amazon.
Sovereignty.
Available on Amazon.
Thank you so much.
I hope you found that conversation as inspiring as I did. Now we'll jump over to our interview with Evan Owens, who is the VP of Business Development at Kadena. So it was nice to reconnect with their team and get a bit of an update from their end about all the work they're doing and how they're trying to play a major role in the industrial side of blockchain and investment.
Thank you, Evan, for joining us for your Web3 Warriors podcast. Coming in live from Consensus 2025. Really a lot of exciting builders, a lot of innovation happening in this room. And we're connecting with Evan Owens, the business operator, head of business operations with Kadena.
VP of BD, but titles don't matter. We're all on the same team here. So.
Well, thank you for joining us, Evan. So we really just wanted to tap in with Kadena. We actually sat down and had an in-depth conversation with Will, who's the co-founder of the business, and really got into a little bit of the mission and vision about what you're working on and kind of real world use cases, right? It's tangible, it's a proof of work chain, which is a little different from a lot of other chains that are out there kind of providing solutions. So can you just give us kind of a high level of what's new and exciting with Kadena and what you guys are working on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good summary though. But we are one of the only, I think, proof of work blockchains that's also EVM compatible, and that's the big breakthrough for us this year. We're announcing testnets going live at ECC this summer on June 30th. So one of our main missions here at this conference is meeting all these builders and founders and getting them on board as testnet partners.
Nice.
Now, part of that is we have a very robust grants program. We have a $50 million EVM grants program, and then a $25 million RWA grants program. So we're focused on, our tagline is bridging DeFi and TradFi, right? So we're working on big partnerships with, Fidelity, Goldman, BlackRock, all the traditional asset managers of the world, and getting them to tokenize funds or do RWAs on Kadena. And then on the TradFi side, and then on the DeFi side, working with all the major perp dexes, lending protocols, dexes, getting them on Kadena, and then hopefully connecting the dots from TradFi, which can of course, be liquidity providers for these DeFi protocols,
100%.
right?
That's amazing. Wow.
So the point is it's a win-win for both sides,
those
right?
are pretty strong parallel tracks to have going.
Yeah.
So on the DeFi side, is that where the EVM compatibility comes in? Do you find that you're really trying to bring a lot of traffic from like the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem, and are you having a lot of success with that? And what's the big pull to bring people onto the Kadena to work in the DeFi space there?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. I think, Kadena's 5 years old, right? We launched January 2020. And so it's hard. You have one challenge in crypto trying to attract builders to your ecosystem when there's hundreds and hundreds of L1s, especially new ones coming alive every day, right? Whether it's Hyperliquid or Monad or Barachain or Sweet or Aptos, right?
Yeah.
So how do you stand out in that like sea of noise? You have to find your edge. And for Kadena, that's, laser focused on DeFi, RWA, tokenized funds. So we're not, the gaming platform. We're not the meme token platform. We do have some NFT stuff, but we're not really focused on that, right? It's like finance, business, real world use cases. That's what we're building, right? But, going back to my first point about so many L1s in the world, you have a hard enough challenge getting builders to come to your ecosystem. If you're not EVM compatible, then you have a secondary challenge, right? Because they have to learn different smart contract languages, et cetera. So I think for us, that was one of the big, catalysts for being EVM compatible, to remove that barrier, and now people can deploy their smart contracts and their apps on Kadena much more quickly.
Nice. And you find that it is still the case that like in DeFi in general, like something like 60 to 80% are still kind of working in the EVM space. And I know Solana's kind of catching up and they've got a lot of things happening in their ecosystem. But to that point, there's also a lot of, I would say, FUD around Ethereum these days, and a lot of kind of people acting like, oh, well, it's hit its peak, and how do you feel about that conversation and kind of
I think
the importance of Ethereum as like a foundational, decentralized, programmable cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sure everyone talks.
Got their own.
Everyone talks their bags, right?
Yeah.
And look, Solana's doing great things.
Yeah.
There's the movement ecosystem is doing great things, but I think if you look at the data, EVM is still by and large where the stablecoin volume is, where RWAs are coming, where 80% of the DeFi activity is. So. It's still the king of the hill. Will it be forever? Well, I don't know.
Time will tell, I guess.
But right now it is, and so we definitely looked at should we do like this be SVM compatible, right? But and maybe we will in the future. But right now, it's EVM compatibility is the next step for us.
Nice. That's the big opportunity there. And then on the RWA front, definitely something like I work in the fintech space, as you might see on my badge here. I'm with the Palo Finance Technology, and we offer on and off ramping services at large volume. Very reliable, mainly for the Canadian environment, but we've been working with more and more international companies as well. So I've been hearing a lot about RWA, but I haven't seen a lot of it in tangible kind of execution. So are you actually seeing that rubber hit the road, and you're seeing people buying tokenized real estate, tokenized, all those kind of real world assets? Or?
Yeah, I think it's still probably the first pitch, the first inning there.
Right.
We just announced a deal 2 days ago with Impact to bring a tokenized fund from one of the largest asset managers on planet Earth to Kadena. So that was a big deal for us.
Okay. Wow.
I think you have to look at it like there's lots of different asset classes, right? There's public equities, there's debt, there's LP shares and private equity funds and VC funds that could be tokenized, all the way down to art and sports cars and collectibles, and there are companies doing that, right?
Yeah.
Plume, I know, is focused on maybe some of those collector items, right? For us, it's like strictly the finance stuff, real estate, tokenized funds, public equities, etc. But it's look at the Wall Street Journal, it's happening, right?
Yeah, it's the talk of the town. It's just it's just seeing that rubber hit the road. But to your point, I guess we are in the first inning, and I just wonder how it's going to scale. And definitely this show has been about tokenized art and the creator economy and the ability to use tokens to basically create new revenue for yourself, right?
Yeah,
and we actually talked with Will about even the use case around tickets and really basic use cases around tokenizing things. So there's from the very small, like you say, art, creator class, all the way up to the big investor class. So I think the artists are kind of leading the way, the musicians. You know, they've been kind of doing it now for 4 or 5 years, but I just haven't seen the real world catch up, despite, the big names kind of talking about it as if it's right around the corner. But now it feels like 2 years they've been saying it's right around the corner.
I started in crypto in 2015, and back then we were saying, the institutions are coming, the herd is coming.
Right.
Well, that was 10 years ago. Right. Now they finally are, but people are always saying they're coming, and we're still early.
Yeah.
I think too with RWAs, it's more nuanced and complex maybe than some people realize, right? There's legal implications, tax implications, different jurisdictions. It's not as simple as like, hey, we're going to take this and just tokenize it and put it on chain and everyone can buy it and trade it, right? Like, are you an accredited investor? Right, there's all these things that have to be figured out.
I like that. That's a good point. Regulatory stuff exists. It's a reality, right? Yeah. That's amazing. So you're doing all the regulatory work.
Yeah, of course.
Up.
Right now, Kadena is like laying the foundation to make sure we have all the plumbing and piping and infra in place so that we can actually make it smooth for users to participate in the RWA world.
Amazing. Well, this has been a really, really good highlight of what Kadena is working on. So you've got the fund for the DeFi and you've got the fund for the RWA.
Yep.
What are the qualifications? How do people get involved? What's the kind of target market for those?
Well, first of all, hit me up on Telegram. I'm at Captain Owens, or you can go to our website at kadena.io and apply right away for a grant. But myself and our whole team, we review every grant application that comes in. We respond right away. The first step, of course, is like we want to meet every builder and founder we can and hop on a call and have a talk and hear what you're building. Does it make sense for you guys to come to Kadena and vice versa? And then we go from there.
Nice. So very much like targeting the institutional investors. Are you doing anything at the creator level, like you mentioned art and stuff like that? Or it's more so kind of that institutional investor class kind of that you're really targeting?
Yeah, I think the latter, Although, again, my mission here at Consensus is to meet every founder and builder we can, whether it's like a perp dex, a lending protocol, swaps, exchange, etc. Hear about what they're building, what challenges they have, and be like, hey, Kadena can help you, here's what we provide, right? Grant funding, here's the technology, the co-marketing, right? All the things that, we're only going to be successful if our builders and apps deploying on Kadena are successful.
The ecosystem is everything,
right?
Of course. The network effect is everything. Awesome. Any final thoughts you want to share about Kadena and what you're working on?
No, just besides the fact that I love Kadena. It's an incredible company, great people, the culture's amazing. I'm coming up on 1 year there, so very excited.
On the proof of work piece, before I let you go, why is it important to be a proof of work chain, and how are you kind of standing on that into the future as a lot of other chains have gone the proof of stake way?
Yeah, great question. I think the answer is proof of work is proven to be the most secure blockchain, right? Look at Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe institutionals want that.
Exactly. Right? That's, I think when our founders created Kadena, they were thinking about institutions, and the proof of work is the way to go there. And so, security is number one.
Exciting stuff. All right, well, you heard it here. Check out kadena.io for more information. Apply for a grant if you're part of that target market, and let us know if you have any questions, and we'll forward it on to the Kadena team. Thank you so much,
thanks,
Evan.
Dan. Appreciate it,
for your time. Have a good time at Consensus.
Cheers.
All right, peace out.
All right, it was great to reconnect with the Kadena team for a bit of an update. Now we'll jump over to our interview with Andy Baehr, who is head of product and research for CoinDesk Indices. And it was really important, I thought, to connect with the CoinDesk team since they're the hosts of Consensus 2025. But more importantly, I thought it was interesting to get a bit of an insight from an investor perspective, and specifically this idea of creating essentially a portfolio of crypto assets to invest in a safer way than really trying to time the market and invest individually in different crypto projects. So it was a cool conversation. I definitely learned a few new things, as I'm not as focused on the investor side of blockchain and crypto as many others, but it was great. And thank you to Andy for giving us the opportunity to pick his brain a little bit. And without further ado, here's the interview with Andy Baehr, head of product and research for CoinDesk Indices.
All right. We are here live at Consensus 2025 with Andy Baehr, the head of indices at CoinDesk. Thank you for joining us here. I'm really interested in picking your brain about the market. And it's really been a lot of innovating conversations around here, talking about Bitcoin mining, which seemed like it's been a very difficult nut to crack for the business industry. But it sounds like I just heard Eric Trump talking about what they're trying to do in the States and the way they're trying to reduce energy costs to make Bitcoin mining a more profitable endeavor and to be able to provide Bitcoin to the markets at a more reasonable price. And you, working in the indices space, looking at the kind of stock markets, looking at the way that the ETFs are functioning, just want to get a bit of input from you. I will say at Web3 Warriors, we're very focused on the creator economy side of blockchain and cryptocurrency, but we definitely see the investor model and the idea that you can lock up your liquidity, lock up your investments in crypto and be able to see some gains. But now we're seeing a lot of the traditional space kind of getting into the crypto conversation, getting into Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum ETFs. So I'm just curious, where do you see this whole conversation going, and how does your role at CoinDesk really play into kind of what's happening in the market
Thanks
right
for
now?
that. I'm glad you say these great things about consensus. Fabulous, 12,000 people here. A lot of talk about stable coins and tokenizing real world assets. This time last year, we were all sort of overcome with joy about the Bitcoin ETFs. Everybody wants more people at the table, right? You need more money coming in, and you don't want there to be any barriers for new money to come in to invest in the space. That just makes the space more resilient and makes it broader. Bitcoin's had an incredible run with kind of a 1-year head start in the United States for regulatory approval with ETFs, ETF options, futures, things like that. Right. So Bitcoin's in pretty good shape right now, and it has led this recent rally, as it leads most rallies, higher from kind of the doldrums of the post-inauguration day kind of slump.
Right.
That being said, for your community of builders, the whole digital asset class needs more breadth, right? We need people to be more aware of new projects that are built on existing blockchains or new blockchains that are going to serve new purposes. That's going to flow all the way to investors who want to look beyond Bitcoin, but the education process beyond Bitcoin, what should I think about Ethereum or Solana, or should I, how should I think about DeFi? Is Aave a particular special DeFi name, or are there competitors? It gets very complicated, a little bit like the way tech stocks were in the late 90s. What we look to do...
And we know how that went.
We know how that went. There was a lot of bad stuff mixed in with good, and over time a lot of the bad stuff just drifted away.
Went to zero,
It went to zero, and the good stuff held on, right? And now, although at the same time, NVIDIA wouldn't have been a name on people's lips in 1999, but of course it's it's huge now.
Only for a few gamers like me, or like their video cards.
It was preaching to a different room full of people. So what we try to do is we have a CoinDesk 20 index, which is very liquid. It trades a lot in the crypto native community. We're trying to take the idea that the more the index trades as a unit, the more liquidity will be built up in those names. That will bring in, just like ETFs, new investors. That will put more people around the table. And then the names that are in this index will have kind of a special status as being part of this super liquid set where liquidity is supported by the index. Now, for the builders,
on-chain index?
No. Everything's off-chain, and this will take place in perpetual futures, in over-the-counter Delta One and options products. There's an ETP in Europe with Wisdom Tree, which has enjoyed, like any other CoinDesk product, CoinDesk Indices product, a 30% rally in the last month. We're bringing things into the United States and talking to regulators about how that's going to work. But right now, people want something kind of like the way QQQ worked in tech. You bought that thing.
You knew you had a good share of all the tech energy.
Correct, and the dead skin would fall away, and the stuff that was going to last was going to stick with it.
So a little bit of a safer option.
It's a safer option for those people who want to buy, they maybe have already bought some Bitcoin, but now they want to say, what's next? They don't want to pick individual names. They don't want to time the market. Just buy the index, and to the extent that the industry and consensus gets bigger and bigger every year, this index is going to do fine.
That's beautiful. And so as of right now, the index is primarily in Europe?
The index is available in ETPs in Europe. It's available in perpetual futures for professional traders on Bullish Exchange. It's available in structured products in Hong Kong and in Australia. Actually in principal protected form. There's a number of, for hedge fund clients, there's a number of OTC dealers who will make options markets, and we're working very hard to bring it into the United States and into Canada here.
For sure.
So that more people can have it, again, with fewer obstacles. Just press the button, you get CoinDesk 20. So
we should be able to support that innovation in Canada for sure. We were early to the ETF conversation. We actually had Bitcoin and Ethereum a couple years before I think America approved it. And so I think it makes sense to kind of embrace this innovation and get into the indexes and be able to let the Canadian market kind of access
Totally agree. Right now the regulators are looking at things asset by asset. If you look at things at the index level and say this is a good portfolio that has industry-wide good diversification, a methodology to remove smaller things and add in new things that are growing, that over time should serve investors better. and maybe rescue some of them who make undereducated picks about individual products that go the wrong way, like in 1999 in Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So QQQ went, had a drawdown like everything else in 2000 when the tech bubble burst. But if you held on, it was going to come back, and you have no loser list with QQQ because it's going to let the new and biggest things rise to the top.
Amazing.
That's the beauty of indexing, and that's what we think many investors, especially new allocators, that's how they're going to express their primary view in digital assets.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that education, and you're finding a lot of success in that index conversation then, and you see an upward trajectory.
There are a lot of indices out there in crypto.
Right.
Our focus was make the traders happy, go for liquidity, not necessarily AUM on day one. Get people trading the index, they'll get used to it, the underlying assets will become liquid, get into the derivatives markets, and then the ETP issuers will come to you because they see this is going to be really easy for me to implement.
No doubt.
So we love that strategy, and we're doubling down on that. So it's a great, and Consensus is a great time to talk to people about it.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you for talking with us. Just want to pick your brain one last thing. Do you have any conversation or any thoughts around the whole Ethereum conversation? And like when we talk to a lot of layer 2s, like we talked to Cadena, which is layer 1 earlier, and they're EVM compatible. And it still seems that like the EVM compatibility is a major selling point when looking at these newer blockchains that are popping up. And to me, as a bit of a Ethereum
tell me
bull,
which way you're going before I answer the question.
I'm a bit of an Ethereum bull.
You've had a good couple of weeks.
You know, as a exactly, that's true. And as a Canadian, it is a Canadian innovation that we like to point to as well.
For sure.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are as you see like a high level kind of view of all the market and the industry.
Yes.
Is Ethereum here to stay? Do you see an upward trajectory? Do you think that it is that main decentralized, programmable cryptocurrency?
Right.
And how do you feel about it?
Well, we don't make investment advice and we don't talk about individual tokenomics. That being said, it's the second biggest asset in most of our indices. It has suffered a crisis of identity, right? And I think that has led to a lack of excitement, which leads to a lack of sponsorship from the investment side.
Lack of investment.
The other idea, I think, that is that the promise of EIP 1559, which would lead to a deflationary state for the asset, hasn't quite worked out since so much of the volume has moved from the base layer to layer 2s.
Right, that is.
That being said, still has 50% of DeFi TVL. You can't really list a credible, say, stablecoin or tokenized real-world asset without at least having it on Ethereum.
Having an Ethereum option,
And it's a major item of collateral for loans. It's still the major item of DeFi. So I think it still has some strategic vision things that it needs to maybe communicate better to the user group, but it's not going anywhere. I would say it ends up more being another reserve currency within the crypto space than going away. A lot of people say things will execute on layer 2s and kind of settle on Ethereum.
One. And even the layer 2s are depending on the layer 1
They are depending. The key is the economic model going to work in such a way that will convince investors that there's going to be ongoing demand for Ether as a gas token. So all these things are at play. I've talked to a lot of people. Nobody's given me a really great answer why we had a ginormous rally ever since the Pectra upgrade. I don't think it was necessarily the Pectra upgrade, but it's been pretty rapid and violent sentiment shift, but we'll take it. It's great to see Ether back at around 2,600 now, I guess.
It's nice.
But it was at 4,000 after the election, so we'll see.
I think there's a lot of room to grow, and to your point, I think the layer 2s are kind of taking the conversation, and I like what you're saying about, like, it basically comes down to sentiment and narrative, right?
Yes.
It's like if the narrative's not there that people actually understand the value of Ethereum, they're not investing in it, which doesn't make the number go up and makes the less of an investor vehicle, right? And more of just a technology layer.
Even awesome things have to tell people why they're awesome.
Why they're awesome,
right?
So they bring in the investment,
I think if people understand the thesis better and see a clearer vision, then some of this narrative around lost direction kind of goes away. The product itself has this, look, the only thing you can't invent in crypto is a 10-year-old thing, right? So if you can't invent a 10-year-old thing, then 10-year-old things are rare, right? Ethereum turns 10 this year, doesn't it?
It's got its legs under it, I think it is.
Right, so somebody said to me this morning, if Bitcoin were brought to market today, people would be scratching their heads. This doesn't do anything. What good does it do me? Well, it's a 17-year-old thing.
It's shown and proved, right?
Correct. Now, I have a 17-year-old son. There's things I let him do that I don't let a 1-year-old do, right?
Of course.
So Bitcoin's like that. I think Ethereum has enormous network, enormous install base, very credible security. I would like you, I would just enjoy, not as an investment proposal, but I would enjoy seeing it live its best life.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I think that's a very enlightened position to look at Ethereum from, and all your other input as well. Any other thoughts or anything you'd like to share about the index before we wrap up here?
I'm just thinking, again, this time last year we were kind of in a state of relief about ETFs and about Bitcoin adoption momentum. This year, a lot of what is being built, a lot of the RWA stuff, the stablecoin stuff, the legislative stuff, all of that needs layer ones. And so investors or anybody who's looking at the space, crypto's still kind of a trading asset class, and we're trying to get it to nudge it into a real investment asset class where people can plant money and leave it there for 10 years.
And see the use case, right? And see why they're planting their money there. Right?
$250 billion in stable coins, $5 billion-ish in tokenized money market funds and treasuries. They need a layer ones. So figure out which layer one you like. If you can't figure it out, buy an index, which includes a bunch of layer ones, and then sit and watch history unfold in front of you.
Let's go. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. Wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of Consensus 2025.
You too. Thanks.
All right, we'll be in touch. Take care. Thank you.
And then we had an interesting conversation as well at the Etherlink booth. So Etherlink is a layer 2 built on Tezos that is actually EVM compatible and aims to bring a lot of kind of EVM functionality to the Tezos ecosystem, right? So they've got DeFi on Tezos, they've got all kinds of interesting kind of Web3 gaming opportunities, and they have this platform called uranium.io where they're actually tokenizing real world asset of uranium on chain, where you can buy fractions of uranium or as many tokens of uranium as you'd like to essentially invest in their holdings of uranium. So it's a very cool kind of platform, or a cool kind of innovative idea. I would recommend checking out uranium.io, but you'll also hear from one of the advocates in the space, Aaron, who is a really cool guy, and he agreed to do a bit of a breakdown of uranium.io, but also Etherlink in general, and how they're bringing, again, that EVM kind of ecosystem into the Tezos blockchain. And as somebody who collects a lot of art on the Tezos blockchain, I've never really heard a lot of other activity happening in the Tezos space. And so it was nice for me to hear just about like kind of future growth plans, EVM compatibility plans. Right now, the Etherlink blockchain is only accessible through, I believe, MetaMask or an Ethereum wallet, but they are bringing it over to the Temple wallet, which is what I use for my Tezos activity, right? And so I think it would be cool to be able to just have all of that in the same place in the Temple wallet. So it was cool, and I was glad to be able to kind of hear that right from the kind of the source, right? The people that are out there building and advocating in the space, and being part of the Etherlink ecosystem and community. So we'll have that to share as well.
So I'm about to send him $1 of tokenized physical uranium from uranium.io on Etherlink.
Nice. Etherlink is a layer 2 on the Tezos blockchain that supports the EVM language, EVM compatibility. Nice, there we go. So tell us a little bit more about...
So now you can have this t-shirt that says...
thank you. Is that XL?
I own uranium, do you?
Nice. Okay. I need to learn a little bit more about Apple Farm and Etherlink and the token that you just sent us.
Okay.
Tell us just a little bit high level.
Okay, so Etherlink is an EVM compatible layer 2 on the Tezos blockchain. It mainnet launched on the 29th of April 2024. Currently right now we're running Apple Farm, which is a DeFi incentive program. So we're giving out $3 million in rewards for people to participate in DeFi protocols on Etherlink. So we've got an AMM DEX, which is called Iguana DEX. We've got an on-chain central limit order book called Hanji. We've got Superlend, which is a lending and borrowing aggregator. Nice. And there's some really, really juicy APYs right now on Apple Farm. So if you're holding USDC, you can get over 10%. Same with ETH, same with Wrap Bitcoin. We
over 10% on ETH too?
Over 10% on ETH right now. TVL has surged over $40 million over a month and a half as well.
Okay.
And like one of the standout applications on Etherlink is uranium.io.
All right.
And that's a platform that allows you to own tokenized physical uranium. And with Apple Farm as well, if you hold uranium in your wallet, you can also earn 70% plus APY on the uranium in your wallet.
70% to support the uranium network and stake on uranium. There we go. That's amazing. That's amazing. So very impressive.
Etherlink's really focused around DeFi.
Okay.
It's EVM compatible, so if you can bridge assets from Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain,
nice.
bridges in minutes.
So to everybody questioning what's happening over on Tezos, for people like me who collect NFTs on Tezos all the time, support art on Tezos, there's DeFi on Tezos, there's gaming coming to Tezos, and Etherlink is bringing the whole EVM compatibility world into Tezos.
And it's part of the wider Tezos X vision. So we have Etherlink, which is the first spot rollup. Then we're going to have Justice, which is a JavaScript rollup. Okay. And then we're also going to have Tezlink, which is a Michelson-based rollup. So all these three rollups working together under one canonical rollup. And that's the future of Tezos.
Damn, amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. Aaron Male with Tezos. Are you with the Tezos chain?
I work.
You know your shit. How long you been working in Tezos, helping the Tezos movement?
Just over a year.
Okay.
Nice. I work at Twitter Tech.
How many NFTs do you own right now on the Tezos blockchain?
On the Tezos blockchain, I have around 20, but on Etherlink, I have I have all the Etherlink NFTs.
No doubt.
And the collectibles as well.
Okay, Etherlink NFTs. That's a whole other marketplace. Cool. What's the name of the Etherlink NFT marketplace?
It's Rarible.
Oh, Rarible. Okay, nice. Compatible on Rarible. There you go.
So Etherlink's compatible with Rarible.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of NFTs on Rarible. Collectibles.
Yeah.
They're really cool. Shout out to Apple Farmers Club PFP. If you have one of those.
Nice. And you were mentioning right now Etherlink is only on MetaMask, but they are bringing it to some of the Tezos wallets, you're saying, right?
Yeah, so right now, Etherlink is natively supported with Rabbi Wallet and MetaMask.
EVM wallets.
EVM wallets in general.
Yeah.
However, the Temple Wallet beta just got announced for EVM compatibility with Etherlink. So essentially, in a couple of weeks, if not months, we will have Etherlink and Tezos wallets in one, which is huge, right? So that's bridging the gap between the Etherlink sort of EVM community and also the Tezos L1 community. So yeah, Temple Wallet in a couple of weeks or months. We're going to have XTZ on Etherlink, XTZ on L1, and then we're going to launch fast withdrawals as well soon. Which are right now, if you bridge from L1 to L2, it's instant, but because it's an optimistic rollup, to bridge back from L2 to L1, you have to wait 15 days for the reputation period. 15
days?
Yeah.
But because it's like some kind of staking related thing?
No, it's a reputation period for to make sure that essentially the transactions or the consensus on the blockchain is valid.
Okay.
However, coming soon at the end of this month also, we're launching fast withdrawals, which is a non-custodial way for you to essentially bridge back from L2 to L1 in a matter of minutes.
Nice and quick.
All right. And that you don't see this on other blockchains as well.
There's a drone flying by us.
You don't see this on other blockchains, like the ability to move from the layer 2 to the layer 1 instantly.
Wow.
So there's really good tech on Tezos.
I'm going to be watching Etherlink.
There's DeFi on Tezos, there's art on Tezos, there's gaming on Tezos. There's a bunch of rollups coming soon to Tezos as well. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're good. Thank you, Aaron. So that was a fun conversation. As you can tell, I was a little bit excited, maybe overly excited about hearing about this development and all these developments happening in the Tezos ecosystem. As a longtime kind of collector of Tezos art NFTs, it was just good to hear that they, have other things being built out to bring more value to the overall network. So thank you again, Aaron, for that time. And now, lastly, as we wind down here, we're going to just hear from this AI expert, Misha da Vinci, who really takes on this whole concept of this kind of snowball of AI that is barreling towards us and how we can actually position ourselves to win and be aware of really what is coming down the pike. So with that, let's hear a little bit from Misha's presentation before we wrap up this episode.
Trend, writing content that worships the AI Lord. So-and-so is so great. They're so amazing. Hoping that they'll like your tweet or like your content and say you're so cool. And then there are the users already using AI models as oracles of truth and fact, outsourcing our judgment, our capacity to make decisions, our greater sense of self, our agency. And if we keep adapting, let's fast forward 6 months or 12 months. Because 6 months or 12 months in exponential technology is like 60 years, 100 years, I don't know, a lifetime. What does it look like? We'll be asking the model what to do, what to eat, what to say, what to believe, who to be, because we forgot how to decide without it. And so once again, we'll be part of the product. It's just human reinforcement learning by human feedback widgets. That's what we'll end up being. If we adapt ourselves to AI, and we'll have zero agency. So all of this to say, no, adapting, folks, is not the move. It's not. Let's learn from our mistakes. Do not adapt to AI. Just yesterday, Sam Altman posted something. He says, okay, so everything you ever saw, thought, read, did, conversation you ever had, learned, everything you ever did is going to be here in one little package, and you'll be able to access it. Oh my God. And I'm like, oh my God, no, Sama, you will be able to access it. Stop trying to con us into buying your, you know what? And you know what? This is an audience that understands that. Y'all are into decentralized technology, so you know what the problem is. But it's seductive. It's going to be super seductive. Okay, so we got to race through because I spent way too long talking about stuff. So what must we do? What am I saying we must do? What is this big thing I want you to think about that no one else is going to tell you? Because they're too busy catching up themselves, too busy trying to sell something to you. You must evolve. We must evolve. We must all evolve. And what does that mean? In the age of AI, that means becoming more human, not less. It means thriving in uncertainty. It means embracing ambiguity, welcoming discomfort, not productivity hacks and the usual stuff that you would see on, oh my God, biohacking, productivity hacks, oh my God, hustle more, hustle. That's not what it is, because then you will be sucked right into the AI model. You'll end up as a human reinforcement learning by human feedback widget, I promise you. That's what will happen. So instead of adapting, we must evolve, and evolving is a whole different way of operating, a whole different way of being, and it's instead of surviving and fitting in and maintaining safety, you grow, you expand, and become more. I can't walk through all of that, but essentially it's a total shift in how you're thinking about life, how you're thinking about yourself, who you are becoming, and ultimately at the end of this, it says if you're adapting, you're maintaining the current order of things. If you're evolving, you're shaping the future. Evolving isn't about survival. It's about sovereignty, it's about agency, intuition, imagination, presence, purpose, meaning. And this might sound silly, but I promise by 2026, 2027, you're like, I wish I listened to that crazy woman. I can sense it 2025 in Toronto when she was talking about this stuff. You'll look at me now, I'm still, yeah, no, folks, listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. And we've done this before. Evolution is something humans have done, but only under enormous pressure. We've made cognitive evolutionary leaps before. History is marked by these moments when it did not adapt or we transformed, when we went from etching stories onto cave walls and evolved from instinct to symbolism, when we started planting crops and evolved from being nomads to civilization builders, when we dared to ask why and we evolved into scientists and skeptics, when we declared human rights and we evolved into citizens with agency, and now, in the face of generative AI, when we become more human. We don't adapt and fit into AI, must evolve. And that's where blockchain comes in. See, there is a blockchain. It has something to do with this conference. Here's the catch. Mindset alone won't get us there. You can be brave, creative, wildly original, but if the infrastructure you're living in is designed to extract, track, and control you, then you're still a product. That's why real evolution needs new systems, a new foundation for how we create, connect, collaborate. This is where blockchain comes in. We're at a blockchain conference. This is why I'm excited about blockchain. Not because Bitcoin grew up. Oh my God, oh my God, Solana is the next Ethereum. Why is Ethereum not up, you guys? Oh my God, I'm so mad about all my money in Ethereum. And now Solana's thinking, really? That's not the reason we should be excited about blockchain. The reason we should be excited about blockchain is it fundamentally changes everything, the way we function as humans. It, as you know, removes, okay, let's walk through it step by step. Blockchain doesn't evolve us. It creates the environment where evolved, high agency humans, like I hope every single one of us is, and creates an environment where we can thrive. It provides self-sovereignty, coordination without gatekeepers, privacy by default, markets reward contribution. In previous evolutionary leaps, we invented cities, printing presses, constitutions, scientific methods. But this time, every leap has its tool. This time the tool is blockchain. And it's arriving just in time as AI shows up to take us over and crush our souls. Blockchain comes along the other side and says, nobody. But that's only if we evolve and use the tools the way they're meant to be used. Because if we don't evolve, what happens? Blockchain ends up being Bitcoin go up, money go up on desperation of why it's not going up. And that's helplessness. That's adapting. Evolving says, ooh, what is this new technology and how can I actually use it to change my life, to change my world, to change the world, to do something magnificent, to have massive impact, to actually rock life out, which is what we came on this planet to do, y'all. Okay, so let's zoom out. This thing says I have 15 seconds left, but I'm so gonna go for it. We're entering an era where the convergence of these two technologies, two powerful, incredible, amazing technologies, is remaking the future. It's a golden age beckons. A world that's pro-innovation, pro-startup, pro-creator. AI is accelerating cognition. It helps us think, generate, and optimize at incredible speed. That's a negative if you're adapting, but if you're evolving, positive. Blockchain is a decentralizing power. It helps us own, coordinate, govern. Boy, oh boy, a great period's ahead, only if we evolve. These two forces are converging, and that convergence isn't just transforming technology, it's reshaping what it means to be human. Because as AI pushes us to evolve our minds, we have no choice. We will not survive as human if we don't evolve in response to AI. Blockchain gives us a scaffolding to evolve our systems. AI challenges us to rise. Blockchain gives us the infrastructure for agency, privacy, ownership. We like Bitcoin, because it gives us ownership. We shouldn't have to own some coin out there to feel like, okay, I'm building my wealth. We should be able to take what we've created and let the wealth accrue to us. And blockchain gives us that. That's what I'm excited about. So folks, here we are. Our time is up. What does it mean to win in this age of AI? It means stop trying to compete with the machine on its terms and stop becoming what it can never be. Now, there will be a massive inclination to adapt, give in, capitulate, succumb, and be seduced by AI. I'm warning you. There will be a massive inclination to adapt, to give in, to capitulate, to succumb, and to be seduced by AI. I'm warning you. Don't. This is not about moving faster, it's about thinking deeper. It's not about optimizing, it's about imagining. We don't need to adapt. We need to evolve. By 2030, the world will bifurcate into two sets of people. I am telling you, this is going to happen. You are forewarned. The world will bifurcate into two sets of people. Those who are low agency, and those who are high agency. Those who are a product of AI, those who deploy AI. Those who have adapted, those who have evolved. The question is, who will you become?
All right, so that kind of will wrap up our recap of Canada Crypto Week in Toronto. Again, there was Blockchain Futurist Conference, there was Consensus 2025, and a lot of really great networking opportunities and conversations. I did have a little bit more content on video that I thought about sharing in this episode, but it is a podcast primarily, and as you could just tell from that last video, some of the audio is not great when you're trying to capture like presentations in a big group setting at a conference where there's a lot of people and other things happening in the background. So we'll save those videos for maybe future content, but it was really great again to really have these networking opportunities and to learn from a lot of leaders and advocates in the Web3 space and the AI space. I hope you gleaned some information from there that will inspire you to keep building in Web3, to keep pushing forward. As crazy as it is to think of, we are still very early in this. I think that Web2 is still very much the front of people's minds, right? Everyone's on social media, everyone's obsessed with kind of two-way communication communications and video feeds are kind of the most latest hyped thing. So crypto, hasn't quite had its moment yet, and that's the reality. And I think that these use cases that we discussed on today's episode are just a little bit of what we discussed overall during Canada Crypto Week. But again, hopefully it will leave you inspired, and we'll be back next month with another episode of Web3 Warriors. We're going to be talking with some builders, some creators. We've got some really cool interviews lined up, and we are working on, again, reiterating the show a little bit, and so we hopefully will have more to share by next month. So thank you everyone for tuning in to Web3 Warriors. Until next time, we'll catch you all in the metaverse. Peace out. Pew, pew.